Hello everyone, my name is Mark and this is Why I Hate the World. How you guys doing? So it's figured it's about time to make a video about the Bundy Ranch Standoff, right? And if you guys don't know what that is, here's the story in a nutshell. Basically, there's a ranch, and there's this rancher in Nevada named Clive Bundy who owns a farm, and for the past 20 years he's been grazing his cows illegally on federal land. And basically I guess it goes like his ancestors supposedly, you know, great-great-great-grandfather or some shit, like settled this area, and they've been grazing on this land for like 100 years or something like that. And then eventually the federal government wanted to turn this land into a conservatory for a certain type of desert turtle or something. And all of the other farmers around there complied with the new rules and stopped grazing, and Clive Bundy said fuck that shit and just kept doing it. And for the past 20 years they've been trying to get him to stop, and he stopped paying his grazing fees, right? Just said forget it, and tried to pay them to the county, but obviously the county can't take them because the county doesn't own the land. And anyway, so now he owes something like $1 million in grazing fees, and he has 900 head of cattle that are running around on this land eating and grazing and shit like that. That's supposed to be federally protected. And for 20 years the Bureau of Land Management, which is the BLM, which I'll just call them BLM going forward, has been trying to get him to stop, and he's basically just been telling them to go fuck themselves. So finally the BLM decided to go enforce. They got a court order which Bundy refused to comply with, so they went and started rounding up his cattle. And then Clive Bundy, instead of you know, removing his cattle from this land and then obeying the law, decided to go call a bunch of militia libertarian types to come down with guns and basically force the BLM to back off. And the BLM came out with, you know, cops, and they had guns and one of those armored personnel carriers and helicopters and shit like that. And the protesters were there. There were a bunch of armed protesters, and they decided, well, this is going to turn into a massacre. So the BLM decided, rightfully in my opinion, to back off. And that's basically what's happening. So now all the right-wingers out there are treating this like this is some kind of fucking victory. And in the meantime, Clive Bundy, you know, got all his cows back. I guess 2 of them got euthanized in the process or some shit like that. So he lost 2 cows, whatever. And you know, all the conspiratards and the fucking and the right-wing militia types and the survivalists and all those other fucking assholes are like calling this the beginning of the fucking second American Revolution. And I think the entire thing is fucking ridiculous. So, you know, let me just say that straight out. I think this fucking guy should be in jail. I don't understand why he's not in jail. I just don't understand how he's been allowed to get away with this, because now that this shit's gone down and the BLM is left, Clive Bundy has decided to hit the media circuit and milk it for everything that he can. So he's appearing on TV, and he has flanked armed bodyguards with him the whole time. And you know, so that shows where he's fucking at. Okay, he's basically trying to get a book deal out of this is what he's doing. All right, you know, he's not fighting no fucking revolution. He's like, you know, trying to get famous, right? And I don't understand that why they just didn't arrest this fucking guy the second he got off the airplane. Like, see, there's the thing, okay? Because I've heard some other comments, you know, other people on YouTube, you know, in particular, Stefan Molyneux, talk about this, right? And a lot of people are taking this guy's side. And here's some things that they're forgetting to mention, okay? First off, Clive Bundy, right, is one of those wacky, like, crazy, fucking sovereign citizen types. That's what this guy is. And if you don't know what a sovereign citizen is, just take a minute to look him up. They're basically people who are gone, who they're not just normal, like they don't believe in like normal conspiracy theories. They've gone so far off of the deep end that like the whole thing behind the sovereign citizen movement is that there are supposedly hidden meanings in the law that if you say certain words or if you capitalize certain things and stuff like that, then it means something different, and you can basically take advantage of these hidden laws to not pay taxes. All of this shit comes down to not paying taxes. It's fucking ridiculous. Like, anyway, so according to Clive Bundy, like, you know, according to him, the federal government doesn't exist. Okay, this is like a quote, and I'll actually put a link to that so you can see the fucking where this guy, you know, where I got that from. I'm not just making this shit up, right? According to him, he doesn't believe the federal government has any rights at all to anything, and that they don't exist, and the only government that he recognizes is the county and the sheriff. And he is calling on the sheriff to go out and disarm all federal agents in his county and shit like that. And it's, the more you read about it, the more you realize this guy is a fucking cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. All right, he's one of those nutty ass fucking NWO survivalist types who thinks that, you know, the federal government is going to round people up and put them in FEMA camps, and that if he just capitalizes his name and fucking sends a letter to the IRS that he'll never have to pay taxes ever again, you know, it's ridiculous. And this is the precedent that this is setting, is that basically what this is saying is that, you know, if I have a gun, I don't have to obey the law. That's what this is setting, okay? Because it's not fair to him. It's not fair to his neighbors. All of his neighbors decided, you know, we're going to obey the law. We're going to take our cows out, right? And when they went and rounded up all the cattle, they actually found some that didn't have his brand on it, you know? So cattle gets away, and maybe his neighbors were doing it, but they were doing that illegally. But out of the 400 they caught, something like 80% of them were branded with Clive and Bundy's things. So he was just blatantly ignoring the fucking law, right? And, you know, he's basically, the precedence to set is like, if you can, you know, if you can fucking, like, basically embarrass the government to a point where they'll have to kill you, then you don't have to obey the law. And it's a load of fucking shit. It's like, you know, first off, all right, the guy's claim is that his family worked the land for generations, right? Well, you know, that may be true, but that doesn't mean that they own it, okay? There's no, just because you live somewhere, someplace, doesn't mean that you suddenly own it. Like, if I go out into the woods and I build a house, right, and I put in plumbing and I build the walls and I put fences around it and I make a garden and I do all of this shit and electricity and blah, 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 right, and nobody does anything about it for 10 years, and then I find out that house belongs to somebody, that just doesn't make that land mine, all right? That's not how fucking land rights work. It's not how it worked in 1848 or whatever. The land belongs to the fucking feds. It's belonged to them since the territory became a state, okay? I mean, the land doesn't belong to Nevada. It doesn't belong to the fucking, you know, county of Nevada. It belongs to the fucking federal government, you know, and this fucking guy just wants to just take it, you know. And I've heard, if you listen to other commentators like Stefan Molyneux and some other people, that they're just completely misleading. It's like, you know, that's one thing that Stefan Molyneux says in his video, is that, you know, this land is not being used, and, you know, if you take land and you improve upon it, then it's yours. No, it isn't. All right, that's a load of shit. That's like saying, like, if I take my friend's lawnmower, like, say he's not using his lawnmower, right, and I take it and then I put a fucking, you know, sticker on it, then suddenly it's mine. That's bullshit. You know, that's called thievery. Why the fuck is it thievery? You know, thievery when I do it, and it's not thievery when this fucking guy does it. All right, that's how, you know, laws have to apply to everybody equally. All right. Now, just to show you that, you know, I'm not making this shit up, I'm gonna read a very lengthy explanation from the daughter of Clive, fucking whatever the fuck this guy's name is, Clive and Bundy. Okay, now this is from Cherie Bundy Cox, which is his daughter. Okay, and this is a letter that she wrote, basically explaining the situation. All right, so I'm gonna read this to you, and then I'm going to put this on the screen verbatim, so not only can you see the spelling mistakes and shit, but then you can see that I'm not embellishing this or making it up or anything. Okay. All right, so this is her letter. I've had people ask me to explain my dad's forward stance on this BLM fight. Here it is, in as simple of terms as I can explain it. There's so much to it, but here it is in a nutshell. My great-grandpa bought the land rights to the Bunkerville allotment back in 1887, around there. Then he sold them to my grandpa, who then turned them over to my dad in 1972. These men bought and paid for their rights to ranch and also built waters, fences, and roads to assure the survival of the cattle, all with their own money, not with tax dollars. These rights to the land use is called preemptive rights. Somewhere down the line, to keep the cows from overgrazing, came the Bureau of Land Management. They were supposed to assist the ranchers in the management of their ranges, while the ranchers paid a yearly allotment, which was to be used to pay the wages and BLM to help with repairs and improvements of the ranches. My dad did pay his grazing fees for years to the BLM until they were no longer using his fees to help him and improve. Instead, Instead, they began using these monies, apostrophe S, right, against the ranchers. They bought all the rest of the ranchers in the area out with their own grazing fees. When they offered to buy my dad out for a penance, he said no thanks and then fired them because they weren't with an extra T doing their job. He quit paying the BLM but tried giving his grazing fees to the county, which they turned down. So my dad just went on running his ranch and making his own improvements with his own equipment and his own money, not taxes. In essence, the BLM was managing my dad out of business. Well, when buying him out didn't work, they used the endangered species card. You've already heard about the desert tortoise. Well, that didn't work either. So when threats began and the court orders, which my dad has proven to be unlawful for all these years, now they're, i.e.r., desperate. It's come down to buying the brand inspector off and threatening the county sheriff. Everything they're doing at this point is illegal and totally against the Constitution of the United States of America. Now you might be saying, how sad, but what does this have to do with me? Well, I'll tell you. They will get rid of Clive Bundy, the last man standing on the Bunkerville allotment, and then they will close all the roads so no one can ever go onto it again. Next, it's Utah's turn. Mark my words, Utah is next. Then there's the issue of the cattle that are at this moment being amateur. See, what? Hey, whatever. See, even if Dad hasn't paid them, those cattle do belong to him, regardless where they are, my father's property. Regardless where they are my father's property. His herd has been part of that range for over 100 years, as long as the BLM even existed. Now the feds think they can just come in and remove them and sold them without legal brand inspection or without my dad's signature on it. They think they could take them over to two borders, which is illegal, ask any trucker. Then they plan to take them to the auction Richfield and sold them. All with our tax money. They had paid off the contract cowboys and the auction owner, as well as Nevada brand inspector, with our tax dollars. See how slick they are? Well, this is it in a nutshell. Thanks. So, yeah, I don't think we need any more explanation. I mean, this person is fucking wacky. You know, first off, you can't fire the Bureau of Land Management. It doesn't work that way. That's like me saying, you know, I'm gonna fire the Better Business Bureau. Like, I have a business, and then if I don't like what they're doing, I just fuck them. I'm just gonna fire them. You know, I'm not gonna pay them anymore. Yeah, fuck that. That's not how that works, right? That right off the bat tells you the mindset that these people are in. Okay, you know, it's, you know. Secondly, like, basically, fucking, you hear it though. He just kept doing his thing, and then, you know, you hear how it's creeping in there. You know, he did it with his money, not tax dollars, and it's just this ridiculous right-wing fucking I don't know. So anyway, some shit has happened, and it's come out that you know, because a lot of right-wing politicians and a lot of people on Fox News were, like, you know, all over this guy, hyping him up, saying how he's the next fucking best thing since sliced bread, Ronald Reagan and Jesus Christ and shit like that. Then he came out and he made a few racist comments, and then now they're all distancing themselves from him. It's like, oh shit, the guy's racist. Yeah, no fucking kidding. You know, why am I not surprised, right? It's because it all goes hand in hand, okay? The distrust of the government, the fucking ridiculous diatribes against, you know, taxation and representative democracy when it doesn't do what you want, and racism, and it's all weaved into this ridiculous, paranoid right-wing culture of fucking idiocy, you know. that the law should not be dealing with. The law shouldn't be taking this. The law is the fucking law, and this guy should not be getting away with it. And him and all of his fucking people should be hauled off to jail. All of his protesters. And here's the thing, right? Just want to say one more thing before I go. If these protesters were left-wing protesters, the cops would have shot them. All right, that's what would have happened. First off, because they wouldn't have been armed, okay? Because fucking, you know, hippies and shit don't show up with guns because they actually believe in peace, okay? That's another thing, you know, the libertarians and shit. It's supposed to be like the non-aggression principle. Yeah, you're really not aggressive when you have a fucking shotgun with you, right? It's a load of shit. Secondly, you know, if this was like, say, the ELF protesting, or PETA, or fucking, you know, the Occupy movement, they just would have gone in with like bulldozers and attack dogs and tear gas, and they just would have fucking cleared them out, and this shit would be over with, and they'd be gone. So anyway, folks, it's a load of shit. This fucking Clive Bundy should be in fucking prison, and, you know, if the law means anything, it has to apply equally to everyone, right? If the law does not apply equally to everyone, then it's meaningless. And why the fuck do we even have a country then? Okay, that's really all there is to it. So, adios, folks.